We are now live, so welcome everybody. Please remember, while we're going through this, if you have any questions, unmute yourself and ask. Also, if you have any questions when you're working, when we're not in live chat, please contact me. Your success is very important to me. I come into our class multiple times a day just looking. In fact, I found one thing. One of your peers sent me a message today. Apparently, there's one question out there that had two possible answers that were the same. I reported that to our school administration today, so I hope you don't come across it. But please reach out. We're going to cover pivot tables and worksheets tonight. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the discussion question. With the discussion question, this is the last one that could be a bit challenging. The Unit 5 is not bad at all. The Unit 4, you still have to think a little more. Please remember, I have the live chat file. I put two files out there. One that allows you to use it when we're doing our live chat, which I encourage you to do. And the other one is a complete copy of the live chat file we're using tonight. All right, Unit 4. Our primary response is due by Thursday at 11:59 p.m. Central Time. The peer responses are due by Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Central Time. I encourage you to respond to at least two of your peers. While you're working on the primary response, please keep in mind you should write between 200 to 250 words. And we're looking again at the charts and graphs in this Unit 4 discussion forum. There's three things we're going to focus on. What are two additional types of graphs in a spreadsheet? Remember, we have 12 types of graphs, and then we also have subgraphs. But we are saying two additional types. So what does that additional mean? If we look at the question, we're going to see two links. Follow the first red arrow. It's pointing at Excel charts and graphs. Learn the basics for a quick start. That is a YouTube video. The second item we need to look at is a family budget graph. The charts they're introducing in either the video or in the image are the charts we cannot use. So that means please don't address the column, the bar, or combination charts. Use any of the others, just not the column, the bar, or the combination charts. If you go down the path and you start using a column, a bar, or a combination chart, you do not receive credit for participating in the Unit 4 discussion forum. So stay away from those. There's a link here that will show you Excel easy charts. A reminder, don't talk about the column, the bar, or the combination chart. All right. On this page, again, a reminder, and that tells us to write a minimum of 200 words and address these three questions. The two additional types of graphs would be something other than the column, the bar, or the combination chart. I encourage you to watch this YouTube video. She shows you some other ways of using charts and graphs. Remember, there's more than one way of doing anything in Microsoft Office. All right, so this is a video. I'm not going to play it here because you have access to it. But she's going to talk about 5 things: how to insert a chart, how to adjust a chart, how to improve a chart, how to add series to a chart, and finally, she'll talk about creating combination charts. So it would help if you would watch that video. Here's another reminder. Some people forget about this part and they start talking about a column, a bar, or a combination chart. Please don't do that because you won't receive credit if you do. But if you come over to the insert chart and click on that tab, all charts, you will see that there are 12 different types of charts. In addition to those 12, they also give you subgroups of charts. So there's plenty to choose from. Also, this site, Tutorials Point, it talks about chart types. So if you clicked on it, it would take you to a site online and it would provide more information about creating charts. Different types of charts, when to use, they're best for showing what, and it gives you examples. I thought this chart might help you. And here's that image you're going to see. It's a budget graph. So this is another reason why we have to be careful what charts we discuss in the discussion forum. Right. Just as a reminder, your 3 points you're going to address. Remember, no column, bar, or combination charts. There's plenty to choose from. All right, how are you going to gather your points? I always post the grading rubric. So let's look at this. We know total possible points are 75. So the first item, you recommend 2 additional types of graphs. For each additional type of graph, you earn 8 points. And then name 1 graph you do not recommend. So that's another 8 points. So we're going to name 2 types we would use and 1 type we wouldn't use. But while we're doing this, we won't talk about column, bar, or combination charts. The next item, you explained why you recommended each of the 2 graphs. You earn 8 points for each reason. The next item, we want to make sure we respond to at least 2 of our peers. For each response, we earn 5 points. Then our organization and our professional language, which gives us a total of 75 points. Please watch your OV score. You guys are really doing a great job there. No, there's every so often it looks like somebody's made a real high. Get in the habit of, if you find something you like, paraphrase it and cite your source. All right. We talked about this last week. Total possible points for IntelliPath are 625. So we can earn approximately 63% by working on our IntelliPath. The last day they're due is the last night of our class, which is a Monday night. So as long as we've got everything in by 11:59 p.m. Central Time, we're in great shape. What about our discussions? Those are worth a total of 375 points, or approximately 38%. Now, we know when we should respond, or post our initial post, and we know we have to have all posts finished by Saturday night at 11:59 p.m. Central Time. After that time, I go in and I grade your work. So don't post anything after Saturday night at 11:59 p.m. because you will not earn credit. So please watch your due dates and due times. And then finally, our extra credit, we can earn additional 75 points or 7.5%. You earn extra credit by coming to this live chat. And if for some reason you can't come to a live chat, then write a 200-word summary of the live chat you missed and submit it. So you still have a chance. Everybody has a busy schedule, and not everybody can come to the actual live chat. This is about that originality verification. I'm required to go in and enter your OV score. So that's the score that's at the bottom of your grading rubric. I have to enter it there because if I don't, then my supervisor will come back and say, why didn't you report it? So every time I have to do that, for everybody's paper. In Telepath, we have 8 lessons in Unit 4. The first one is dealing with multiple sheet workbooks. And then if you scan down, you're going to see that we're going to be talking about pivot tables. So that's lessons 2 through 6. And then when we go into lesson 7, we're going to learn about using data in Word and 8, importing external text files. But the bulk of this presentation is about pivot tables. I've created several exercises that we can use to try to get you familiar with using pivot tables. Keep in mind, I do not cover everything. Oops, that should be Unit 4. Do not cover everything in Unit 4. Change that. There it is, Unit 4. And also, I have many pages. I think somebody told me earlier today that I actually have 80 items here. If I open up the Activate window, you can see that there's plenty here to use. We probably won't get through everything tonight, but you have a copy of this. First thing, using multiple sheet workbooks. I encourage you to walk through these exercises. It's kind of hard to explain it, but if you use it, you'll learn more about using multiple sheet workbooks. So we have a table of contents, and you can see the items that you'll be using. There's 8 different items here, and they're all hyperlinked. So you could use the table of contents, or you could go down and click on the tabs, whichever works for you. So let's go look at using multiple sheet workbooks. I click on that one. There it is. Using multiple sheet workbooks. We have the objective, talk about what we're doing, how we're doing, and the end result. Okay. And then if you want to go back to the table of contents, you could click on this link. Alternatively, you could go down and click on the next sheet tab. So you can see that there's several here. We're just going to go quickly through them, but I encourage you to download the file that I shared with you and practice some of these. This is one I like. It's got quarter one through quarter four. Each quarter has data on it. The numbers vary between quarter one through quarter four. And then at the very end, you have a summary sheet. And what we're doing is we're summing across all 4 quarters and putting it on a summary sheet. You can see the steps, talks about how to do that. And then also there's a section called formulas. I show you what it would look like. So we navigate to the first worksheet, select an empty cell, such as the first number. We're going to type the equal sign sum, click on the cell. Then we're going to hold the shift key down and go to the last tab, the last data quarter, so that'd be quarter 4. And then we just press our enter key. So hopefully step-by-step instructions will help you sum across 4 quarters. All right. How many of you have used pivot tables? Are you familiar with that? Has anybody ever used a pivot table? Right. The first section is asking what it is. What? Oh, here we got. We do have some people. Yes. Got 4 new. Thomas has. Anybody else? Okay. So Thomas, do you want to share your experience of using a pivot table with us? You may have to unmute yourself if you want to say anything. Okay, there it is. It works well with lots of data. It keeps you organized. Yeah, and you can use pivot tables if you're in a business or if you're starting your own business, or you can use it for personal purpose. You use a pivot table if you're using data. Why would we want to use pivot tables versus the regular Excel spreadsheet? It's easier, it's faster. You point and click and you're done. Yeah, it keeps you organized. Thank you, Thomas. And we got another one out there. What's good for house chores? Yeah, great job, guys. Okay. We always start with some key terms. So on this section, we're supposed to look at a pivot table fields, and value field settings. So we glance at the definitions. And here's our screenshot of a pivot table, color-coded, and it's named. You can see the different parts of it. A pivot table is an interactive way to quickly summarize large amounts of data. Now, if you're just starting a business, your data might not be as large. So now is a good time to learn to use the pivot table, because as your business grows, you're going to be experienced using the pivot table. It won't take you as long. Remember that statement. Those who fail to plan to fail, right? So you learn to use the pivot table. Here, this is from IntelliPath. Why do people use pivot tables? Well, it's used by businesses, but it's also used by personal use. So anybody that's collecting data could easily use pivot tables. And the more data you add, the bigger your tables become. All right, first step, we have to create a table. Now, if we look at this as a game, it's like reading the instructions. Never played that game before. So how do I start playing the game? Read the instructions. The same thing goes for if you're trying to create a pivot table. There's certain rules you have to follow. Number one, the first row should contain column headings. So let's look at the example. Look at row 1. It says column headings. So I see order ID, order date, item, and so on. Rule number 2, there should be no blank column headings. So every column has a heading. Number 3, there should be no blank columns or blank rows. So if we look, all of our columns have information. And if we look across to our rows, we have data in all. We didn't miss anything. Number 4, there should be no subtotals or grand totals within the data. Number 5, one row should represent exactly one record of data. So what does that mean? Well, let's look back at our screen capture. On row 1, we know I've got our column headings. So going down to row 2, first thing we see is a number 1002. That's the order ID. And then if we go across to B2, we see the order date, C2, the item, going all the way across that row 2. Any information we see in that row all applies to the order ID number 1002. If we come down to row 3, we're talking about order ID number 1003. So any item in row 3 refers to order ID 1003. And all the way down, the same is true. All right. So here's our table. Look at your field names. You've got salesperson, region, account, order amount, and month. And coming down, we can see that some of these people have more than one row. So it would take a while to figure it out. We have to combine this information in order to understand it better. So Kathy Albertson has several rows, and Brenna has several. See how they all have several? Well, because they're all on a table, it would take a while. And that's when we reach over and start using a pivot table. But we see column headings, because you're going to see those again. And then we see the individual items. You can see that we formatted this table using a table style. And now we're ready to begin. I put the rules right here, just so you can look back and see how the table has to be structured in order for the pivot table to work. All right. Now, we need to create a pivot table. Well, if we look up at the insert, I have two options. I have a pivot table and I have a recommended pivot table. So you could use either approach. Recommended means they're looking at your data and recommending some possible tables that would help you. Well, you could take that approach. Alternatively, you could go straight to the pivot table and put together your own table. Next, after we've got our table selected, if you look, you can see the dash. So now we see that that table is selected. And then we get our next box. Create a pivot table. First thing we had to do was select a table or range. How do we do that? Just click inside the table on any cell, and typically it will go and select all your data. Sometimes you might have to coax it a little bit and select the data you want it to use. But normally, if you just click in one cell, it will give you the information you need. All right, moving down on this box. A new worksheet. By default, that's what happens. Once we start this, your pivot table will be placed in a new worksheet. Why? Just to give you more room to work. But what happens if you wanted that pivot table to be in the same page? You could do that too. How? Right here, existing worksheet. But normally it's just new worksheet. You have everything in place, and all you have to do is click on the OK button. So we really don't have to do much in this dialog box. We just want to make sure our table data is selected and we like everything else. So we say OK, and then it will create a new worksheet. So here's in summary. Click on your data, click on the Insert tab, select the pivot table, and click on OK. So 4 simple steps. As long as your table is structured, this will work. So here's something we just used. We created our pivot table. Look over here. Now we're looking at a section called Pivot Table Fields. Look at all your field names. Those are the column headings we saw. So that's where they get placed. And then come on down lower, you'll see filters, columns, rows, and values. You have a definition on this sheet for each of those 4. And with values, you'll see a downward pointing arrow. That means there's more information behind that. Here's some more filters, columns, rows, and values. Your definitions of all of them. Your filter, which is right here. What's the purpose of it? Then you have your column labels, your row labels, and your value. Value field settings. If I go back here, this is your values. I have that list arrow right there. And if I click on that, I'm going to get to the value field settings. So in the value field settings, I have a custom name. So if you want to use a different name, You could type it there. And then look what it allows you to do. Since that's a value, since it's a number, you can use some of your Excel functions. And on this image, you see a few of them. You also see the tab that says number format. So if you wanted to format your data, the currency, or whatever format you want to use, go to the number format and make the change. All right, now it's time to create. We're going to add a salesperson to rows, and we're going to add an order amount to values. And the third thing we're going to do, we're going to format the order amount as currency, 0 decimal places. So here's this. If I click on this, watch over here and see what happens. Let's see. Well, it's supposed to bring it out. Where's my data? It's supposed to be bringing it out, guys. All right. Here. Let me go to another table. Is that what was working earlier? Hold on. I need to go get it. I need to get my table. No. Hold on, guys. Here's my table. I'm going to go up. I have my insertion point inside the table. Then I'm going to click on Insert. I have two choices, recommended pivot tables or pivot tables. Let's click on Recommended. What this does is it just gives you possible format. So you can scroll through these. If you like it, just select it and it will be applied. Alternatively, go to Insert, go to Pivot Table, and now we started it. The first thing is make sure you have the right table, all the data selected. You can see those dashed lines, so we know our table is selected. We have a choice of putting this on a new worksheet or an existing worksheet. Well, we're going to start by saying a new worksheet. When that is selected, you're going to get a new worksheet. So let's say, okay. There it is. All right, we have a new worksheet right here. It went to the left of the table. I have this white box, and over here, which is what I was trying to show you earlier, I have the pivot table fields. Think back about that table. What were the column headings? The column headings are right here. Now, I have this white box. What happens, and you can see my insertion point, it's on that white box. What happens if I click inside the worksheet? Now I can't see my fields. But if I click back on that, I can see it. That's not the only way to show your pivot table fields, but it is the easiest way. All right, now I'm going to do some work. Move this toolbar over here. Let's say I want to add a salesperson. There it is. All I had to do was click on it, and it brought it down to rows. Now let's go to order amount. I put a check mark next there. Look where it goes, right down here. Now I see values. Right now it's reading sum of order amount. I also have that drop down arrow. So I'm going to click on that and look at my options. I want to go to the value field settings. So I can click on value field settings and look. Now I have my value field settings dialog box. It's called a custom name, but I could come over here and enter any name I wanted. This just has sum. Another thing, look at the different functions. So you have various functions. Let's click on the number format. We wanted it to be currency. And we can select one of these for negative. Let's say 0 decimal places and say, okay. We're done with this. Say okay. Now look, this is our data. We've got the row labels and the sum of order amounts. We just changed the format right here to currency with 0 decimal places. Is that the only way to do it? No, you could have gone up and used your tabs if you wanted and send it in. That's just one way we could do it. All right, let's go back here. Use our list arrow. Go to value field settings. Now, this time we used sum, but we could have used other functions that make sense depending upon our data. So we could say average, right? If we click on that, the custom name is changing. And we click OK. And now we've got the average. But it was just a simple point and click, and we could easily change our information. Now we saw how big that table was. If we had to use the functions we were initially using in Excel, it would have taken us a lot longer to do this. But because we use a pivot table, it speeds up the process. You work smarter, not harder. All right, let's go back to the values. Use your list arrow. Value field settings. Let's bring this back to sum and go, okay. Now it's a sum. Now, we used 2 fields, salesperson and order amount. What happens if we want different fields? If you don't want the field, simply drag it, drop it. So let's look at this. We've got order amount. We don't want order amount. We're going to click on it with our left mouse button, drag it, and drop it. Okay. Just like that. Drag it and drop it. See that? I was going the wrong place. See the order down here? Just click on it. Hold your left mouse button down. Start dragging. You see that red X there? It tells you you're getting rid of that order amount. And release. The order amount's still there. It's just not part of our pivot table. So we could add something else. This time, let's put an order amount back. It's back here. Let's add month. So we check it, and it drops down here. And look at our data. Look at our table. You see the arrangement. Now, you could change it. You may not know what it's going to look like, but all you're doing is dragging it and dropping it. So I'm going to take mouth or month and I'm going to drag it up by columns. Here's your table. Watch that. I'm going to get month, drag it to columns. Now look, we can easily change the format with just a few simple points, clicks, drags. This is the beauty of using pivot tables. Because what happens if we had to do this manually, just using that table? It would take a lot longer. If we don't want it, we drag it and we drop it off. So now I'm going to move ahead. My table wasn't working right. Got all this. Talked about the areas. We talked about the pivot table. We talked about the value, the field settings. And our pivot table. And now here's our field list now, right? It wasn't showing earlier, but it is now. So I need to add a salesperson to rows. So I'm going to get the salesperson, add it to rows, add the order amount to values, and format the order amount as currency with 0 decimal places. So I'll go to my list arrow, go to my value field settings, go to number format. I want it to be currency, 0 decimal places, and say okay. And okay. And there it is. Now, there's another thing we've got to worry about. It's called the defer layout update. That's right down here. What do we do with that? Well, when you're using pivot tables, it's a hungry thing. It uses a lot of your computer power. It can make your computer slow. So if you want to keep it moving fairly fast, put a check mark where it says defer layout update. That way, you can make all the changes you want without slowing your computer down. And then once you finish doing that, you have to remember to update. When you look, it will give you the old information. So you've got to remember, if you're going to have that checked, to come back and click on the update. In IntelliPath, this is one of the exercises you'll be doing. You have to look at these variables and match them to the correct area. So it's drag and drop. What's location? Is it a filter, a column, a row, or a value? Then you look at values. Based on our definitions, where should value go? How about sum of product? To help you, you have the answers. So location, product, and date are all types of information you would keep in the rows. Why? Look back at the definition. Then we see that values are in columns. Why? And finally, 2 items are in values. Why? Always refer back to your definitions, and it will help you know where to place the information. All right, here's another one. This is a table, and we have steps we want to follow. We've got the table. Now we want to insert the pivot table. So click in any cell in the table, go to Insert. We know the purpose of the recommended ones, but we want to use pivot table. It's selecting the right range, decide if it's going to be on the new worksheet or existing worksheet. If it's on the existing worksheet, you would click in the location, put your insertion point there, and have it go to where you need to go. But we'll say new worksheet and say, okay. And now you're ready. What I'm looking for, it's right here. All right. And these are things we want to do. So let's take a copy of this and bring it back to sheet 7, because that's our new worksheet. I'm just going to paste that there. All right. So I created the table, I inserted pivot table. Now I want to drag the item to the rows. So I want to go to item type. Make sure your insertion point's on this white box. If it is, you'll see your pivot table fields. Something called an item type right there. Click on that, and it goes down to rows. Then we want to drag region to the columns area. So here's region. Drag it and drop it into the columns. Drag the unit price to the values. So the unit price is right here. You want to drag it and drop it into values. Format the unit price to currency. So we'll come down here, click on our list arrow, go to value field settings, go to number format. We want it to be currency. Let's make it 0 decimal places and say okay. Say okay. And then if we look at our table, we can see what's going on. And we could easily go to our data and sort it or filter it. It's the next thing we've got. Remove the unit price from the values area. So we're coming down here. Just click on it. Hold your left mouse button down. Drag it away. There it is. See the red X? Release. Now that's gone. Item type from the rows area. So click on the item type. Drag it. Keeping the left mouse button down. We see the red X. Release. Now it's gone. All right, what else do we want to do? Units sold, we're going to change it from sum to average. So we've got to move the units sold to the values area. If we don't see our, we've got to get a little bit of bokeh, right? I'm trying to bring it out. What happened to my dad? I've got so many tabs in here. Uh, I don't want that. Trying to get the what? We need our table back. We took up too much. Let's go back here. Here, insert pivot table. Okay. With the regions. When you drag these, they may make sense, they may not. Just watch your table and it will help you figure out what's to. All right, let's keep moving. Interactive. You can see where it says click. If you want more exercise, just go up to this site. The lady will talk to you and she'll coach you as you create your pivot table. Here's another thing you'll see. Put the steps in order. We have 4 items. What's step 1? Did we have to do first? Did we go up to insert and then pivot table? Was that the order? Maybe not. When do we select our row? We have our table. We select our row. Once our data is selected, we insert our pivot table. And then we'll see the dialog box. So based on that, click on the insert, click on the pivot table, get your data, and start using those dialog boxes. Remember, you'll see 2 dialog boxes. And here it is, a summary of what we're doing. Click on your table, figure out what it is you're doing, change your settings. Number 4, defer layout update. We selected that because we know that if we don't, it will bog our computer down. The more changes we make, the slower the computer will go. And then we start creating our tables. All right, here's another one. GCF Global. I like that site. Let's go up online for a second. And I wanna, where's my table? There it is. All right, we're up at GCF Global. I like this site for 2 reasons. I like the fact that it gives you a practice workbook. If you want, it gives you a video. And if you learn better just by reading the steps, it walks you through. So here's step 1, to create a pivot table. And just go down through steps. Okay, let's go back to our Excel spreadsheet. And now we're back in our Excel. So here's the data. I copied this from the GCF site. And now I'm ready to experiment. I'm going to click on this. As soon as I do, I see my pivot table fields. I want salesperson and order amount. I have salesperson. I want order amount. So all I have to do is click on the order amount. And now it's down here. Now, what happens if I don't want salesperson, but I want month? All we have to do is click on the field we don't want. Hold your left mouse button down. Drag it over. You see the red X. Release your mouse. And now it's not there. And what we want to put in its place is month. And there it is. Now we want salesperson, month, and order amount. So all we're going to do is add salesperson. Now we have the month, the salesperson, and the order amount. Just with a few point and clicks. Here's an example. You can drag it and drop it wherever we want. We learned about this refresh because we said we could turn our setting to default. We turned it off, but we always have to remember if we want our results to be correct, we have to refresh. There's two ways of doing it. Right click anywhere in the pivot table and select refresh. If you have multiple pivot tables, you want to click on the pivot table analyze. So here we are down here. Look up. I have pivot table analyze and I have design. Why? Because where my insertion point is. If I move my insertion point, I don't have it. I have to make sure I'm on the pivot table. Now here's your pivot table analyze and design. I need to go to pivot table analyze and I need to select refresh. If we forget to do that, our information could be wrong. Another interactive. You can practice using the refresh pivot table. Okay, now if there's anybody out there that likes to use Visual Basic, you could automate this. So if you think you might forget to refresh your data, you could automate it. You could watch this video and learn how to use Visual Basic. Or if you want this little pop-up button, you could come over here. So these links take you to that. This site is another video, and you can see what you could learn about in this video. This is another video. This person used to work at Microsoft. I really like him. I've spoken with him before. He's a nice guy. You could come over. And you have the video and you have the raw data that you could use if you watched this video. This is actually prepackaged in your Excel. My friend, the cheat sheets. Custom Guide is very nice. They give you 3 levels: the beginning, the intermediate, and the advanced. Download this, keep it as long as you use Excel. And they provide a cheat sheet for all your Office products. I encourage you to go explore. Here's another interactive. It gets you started, doesn't take you through the whole system. At some point, they will start charging you. But all of these items are free to use. And then we go into pivot table design. There's two tabs. We have design and we have analyze. So I'm up here, I have a design. You can see when it comes, it has a list arrow. You can select different options. It gives you pivot table style. Pivot table analyze. There's other things that I could use. The only way I can display this pivot table analyze and design is by making sure my insertion point is somewhere in here. So here they're talking about it. And then talk about the layout, different types of layout. Some cases, when you look at the drop down, you're going to see a gray area. That's optional. You have your bold area, you have your optional area. And just come down. Now you want to build reports. Three main types of reports: the compact, the outline, and the tabular. We have our pivot table. We select the pivot table to activate it. We go to pivot table design, which is where right here, set pivot table. We go to design. And here's our report. Use your drop down arrow and you can get different types of report layouts. And I made an example of the three main ones. The compact layout is the default. So there's plenty of tabs in here. I encourage you to watch this. Take your time and practice. There's plenty of ones, this calculated field. I didn't have time to get through this, but right here are the steps you would follow to create a calculated field. I gave you your screenshot. And also you have a video that you could watch to create a calculated field. If you have problems creating one, please reach out to me. You have the interactive. So much out there, right? So we have out of time. But I encourage you to download and practice. Okay, I've gone 3 minutes over, so I'm going to stop now. But thank you, everybody. If you have questions, please contact me. Thank you.